Oh man, so it's not a sleepy Sunday today because we've got Bitcoin down 1.5%, leading FANTOM down 4%. Bitcoin's getting rejected again. Well, it got rejected from the 42,500 level mark we spoke about yesterday. Let me show you that. You can see here straight away the 42.5 level mark where we got rejected from before on the 9th of March. We've now getting rejected again from it yesterday. We've fallen as low as 41,659. We thought we'd be able to pick up some support there, but we've just fallen below that in the last 4-hourly candle. Can we hold 41,659? And can we go and again retest the 42.5 level mark so we can then work our way to 43,000 and beyond? Really important level right now. And that has led FANTOM to rotate back to the downside, getting rejected from its recent high here of 134. It's currently sitting at 126. We know there's an important support level along 126. So again, important that we hold that. And if Bitcoin can hold its support level, so will FANTOM here on this support line at 126 as well. But in today's video, we've got a treat for you guys because as many of you may have seen, Michael Kong gave who's the CEO of FANTOM, gave a long interview with Miles over at Crypto Banter. We're going to be scrubbing through that interview. The link to the full one, shout out to Crypto Banter, will be in the description if you want to watch the full interview uninterrupted. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be scrubbing through the pertinent bits. I've made a few timestamps here of bits I want to cover off with you guys. So make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe, make sure you watch to the very end as there's some interesting points which we need to cover off. So let's get straight into this. And the first point I wanted to cover off was Michael Kong addressing the Andre issue again. Now, we've covered this off in an interview he gave with another channel previously. If you haven't watched that, you can find that on my channel as well when he initially addressed it. But he covers it off again. So let's see if there's any differences in what he said.
Andre publicly, people knew that something was going on when Andre, a couple of weeks ago, turned off his Twitter, right? And, he didn't tell me about it in advance or other people about it in advance, to my knowledge. He just turned off his Twitter, and I kind of had a conversation as to what was happening, and I'm not going to go into all the details about it, but I understand why he did it, right? There are actually some good reasons behind it, which are kind of private. So I won't go into that. But then he basically told people publicly in the Keeper channel that he was handing things over, because people asked him, "Oh, are you still going to be involved in Keeper?" He said, "Not from the 3rd of April. From now till the 3rd of April, I'm going to be handing things over in terms of the UI and what control I have to the existing Keeper team, and then my role will be over." Right? So he didn't.
This is interesting straight off the bat. So this kind of marries up with what we heard. We did hear things around Andre Cronje suffering with some of the attacks he was having online. A lot of people putting a lot of responsibility on him and just struggling emotionally to handle the pressure of the situation he was in. So I think this is understandable. This would explain why someone like Michael Kong maybe wasn't aware of it. But the other thing that was very clear was that whatever happened very quickly. Because even if you were looking at interviews and the behavior of Andre Cronje leading up to his shock exit, he wasn't talking about winding down, right? He was in the midst of launching solidly. It was growing in TVL. Things were looking really good. Whatever did happen would have happened very suddenly. So maybe we would never get the answer, or maybe it just really was that, just burnout and all the pressure from people in crypto space who think it's okay to abuse people online, the keyboard warriors, which we all know about. But we're yet to find out. The other interesting thing we're hearing already from Michael Kong right now is that he was talking about a handover. Remember the Anton Nell tweet, which we covered off? That spoke about termination. The word was so bad. Termination of 25 projects, right? But already you're hearing Michael Kong say, no, there was already discussions around handovers and handing over the existing UI that we have and helping the new team. This is different.
Say, the team's terminating, or I'm terminating Keeper, or I'm terminating any project. He didn't use that language at all. He said, I'm handing it over. And but then when the Anton tweet happened, that nobody was really aware about, he just went on by himself and did it. I don't think he was malicious.
There we go, guys. We got the confirmation. Remember on the weekend when it happened, I created that emergency video? We said that. I said the FANTOM team do not know about this because they're scrambling right now because we never had a statement. It wasn't organized communication to the FANTOM community, right? It was just sudden. We got the tweet and then everybody scrambled to try and get a response together. I think the FANTOM Foundation got a response. Took 2-3 days to get a response out, and then we didn't get an interview from Michael Kong until a little bit after that as well. So definitely they were caught unaware, and I think that confirms this finally now.
think he just like miswrote what he wrote in the tweet, and instead of writing saying, we are ending our involvement in 25 projects and we're handing things over, he said we are terminating 25 projects and here's some of the projects listed. And I think that caused a lot of problems, because if you know these projects, right? If you know the teams behind them, or if you know like the FANTOM Foundation, the people in there, or like the FANTOM community, or you're developing the community, you know that somebody can't just like flick a switch and then turn off the network, right? Or turn off any of these protocols. But I think people who are not like super aware of like FANTOM and the FANTOM ecosystem were super aware about these other 24, 25 projects that they were talking about, might kind of get the impression that Andre and Anton basically had the keys to 25 projects and they were just going to go around and turn them off. So like literally at 3 a.m. my time, I had people messaging me saying, oh my gosh, like is FANTOM closing? Like is FANTOM shutting down? I said, no, that doesn't make sense at all. Why are you saying this? And I looked at the tweet and I understood why some people were saying that. And so, the FANTOM Foundation within 2 hours had to put out like an official tweet thread, which is still alive, and basically just go through all the details as to like what the facts are, right? As to like who has been building the underlying technology, about the community, about some of the misconceptions about some of the other projects that have been running, for example, like multi-chain AnySwap. I personally know the team. They've been working on the technology for years. Andre has been an advisor on them, but Andre wasn't the one who built the technology, right? He helped early on, but he didn't continue developing on it, right? And he doesn't have some magic key to switch off all the validators and switch off the entire network and leave billions of dollars stranded on chain. He just doesn't. And so I think there are a lot of these myths that are built up about Andre that, Andre is definitely a very smart individual. He's very, very talented, extremely intelligent, and extremely well spoken. But I think, people have sort of built like a cult of personality around him, which I can tell you he doesn't really like. And is a cult of like, Andre, DeFi God, he's some sort of like messiah. He can like build everything, he can build the Tower of Babel in like one day or whatever. And a lot of that stuff is just like simply not true, because nobody can run 25 projects simultaneously. So I think people need to realize.
And this is what I think Michael Kong's done a really good job of. Since that tweet which he spoke about, the FANTOM Foundation and Michael Kong did a really good job of coming out with the facts and saying, hang on a second, these 25 projects already have existing teams. Andre Cronje didn't commit any GitHub commits in many, many years. And I think it made a lot of investors calm down a little bit and say, hang on a second, 25 projects of TVO aren't suddenly, trouble. And I think that was the key here. I think investors are very smart. We can't underestimate investors. Investors know who is doing the work and they can see that. But when you get a tweet which saying the projects are terminating, it's no wonder, and I said this in my video when I posted this, no wonder that total value lock fell, the price of the FANTOM token fell, because we didn't have the information. Investors are programmed to act now and figure out the pieces afterwards, right? Sell now, and then they figure out and re-enter the market. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing FANTOM recover. We were as high as 134 yesterday, sitting at 126, and things are starting to improve as people go, hang on a second, this was just an over-exaggeration. I said it at the time, guys. I bought myself. I put my money where my mouth is. I bought some more, 103, 104, and 105 as well. Just to show, hang on, this is a pullback beyond where the market's pulling back, and it's an over-exaggeration on one person. We're not saying he's not a great individual and he'll be missed at FANTOM. He'll be missed in all of crypto, right? He's left 2 times before. He left from Ethereum, and no doubt he'll come back maybe at another project, maybe not FANTOM. But the reality is the FANTOM ecosystem is far greater than one person. We'll come on to that in a little bit as
well. Realize, what the reality is, as opposed to like the myths, and understand, exactly that the FANTOM Foundation consists of almost 50 people now. A lot of these people are developers. More than half of them are developers. They're working on the core technology. They're working on the middleware technology. And some of the developers that we have on the team right now were the ones from very early on. So they're the ones that have built the entire technology stack, all the consensus, integrating with the EVM, the smart contract engine. And, in terms of community, you see like a ton of like hundreds of applications being used. You see, for example, SpookySwap, one of the most popular dexes in the world, only runs on FANTOM. These are all projects that work independently from Andre. And as people can probably like tell, if you go on FANTOM right now, there's no change to any of these protocols.
And that was really important, guys. And I think the market over the last few weeks, since the news came out, has started to say, hang on a second, the platforms are still running. My favorite DeFi platform is still running. SpookySwap still running. Keeper still running. These platforms are still running. Do we have any real reason to be panicking? Was it just over-exaggerated and overreaction?
There's a couple of things. one thing which is like kind of a big historical is that the projects like Solana and Avex and a couple of others, they kind of like began around the same, roughly around the same time that like Phantom began, right? So like 17, 18. But those projects didn't have, I guess, as much problems from the beginning as like Phantom did, right? With all the internal stuff that went on and all of like the problems with, you know, people promising stuff that didn't exist and that sort of thing. So I always, you know, kind of thought that like Phantom lost a lot of momentum after the ICO, and we kind of had to rebuild from scratch. I've kind of have told people, like, using the analogy, the sort of momentum that Phantom got as a project during the ICO was like we were like close to the summit of Everest in terms of like momentum and hype and traction, and then because of all the internal crap, you know, we basically like fell off a cliff and went right back to base camp. And so we had to build up the momentum and then hype and the traction all over again. And so, you know, had the original developers actually promised, you know, had actually delivered on what they promised, you know, had they actually had a test net, had they actually had some sort of asynchronous technology that was out there, we would have continued to be able to run with it and run with the momentum. And I think Phantom would be a lot larger than what it is right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, even though Phantom isn't as big, at least in terms of market cap, like Solana and Avalanche, it still is quite big, right? As a project. And it still has like a very sizable community. And we obviously have like quite a reasonably good technology as like a baseline that we can continue to improve on. But a lot of time was wasted, I think, on the early days, and a lot of the momentum was wasted. And, you know, Solana and Avalanche around the same time, you know, also had like a lot of traction, and they were able to keep running with it. That's one reason. The other reason is that those other chains have had tremendous VC backing from the beginning, and they still do. Phantom, because of the way,
and this is what we've been speaking about for a while, guys. I've made this clear in my videos. Phantom, one of those chains that hasn't had significant VC backing. Many other projects have, particularly the other solid layer one solutions that are ahead of Phantom. That is, it's a double-edged sword for Phantom. It's obviously bad because they don't have the support of VC funds, therefore they're not getting the notoriety and the institutional interest immediately. But the good thing is it's making Phantom do everything the right way. They're growing without baggage. They're growing organically. They're creating the right incentive mechanism. They're doing it from scratch. They're not having to pay DApp developers to come and work, right? They're building them organically, and people are coming to Phantom in an organic manner. So it really is a platform that's moving slightly slower than the other platforms because of lack of VC interest. But by doing so, should be a more sustainable layer one blockchain. Now, the other important thing is whenever you've got VC funds, and I talk about this a lot with Solana, even though I completely open with you guys, I own a lot of Solana. Solana is a great example because Solana has heavy VC and therefore institutional backing. But because of that, I'm reluctant to continue to add more because I know there are, you know, billions of dollars of VC money sat in Solana, paper gains, which at some point they're going to realize. And to think that's not going to have an effect on the price at some point is irrational, right? We're delusional if we think that's not going to happen. So these people who entered in well before we were able to enter in, they're sitting on huge gains. Like even at $80 on Solana right now, for example, they could be selling right now. So you constantly have that selling pressure on coins which have huge interest because ultimately they're there as capitalist machines, right? They want to make the money. They don't really believe in the projects. They got to realize their profits and take that profits, give it back to their LPs and invest in the next project. So this is I think for me, this is a very positive point for Phantom that they don't have VC backing. It'll make Michael Kong's job much more difficult, but through doing so, he'll be building a more sustainable and better equipped blockchain.
Started, it actually had quite a lot of VC backing. And then a lot of people exited the position because they thought that it was a scam. And in the early days of Phantom, it totally was a scam. I got scammed and other people got scammed. But, you know, we basically had to undo the scam and actually like make it into a legitimate project by actually delivering on the technology. And that's what we were able to do, you know, on the 27th of December, 2019, when the first mainnet release was launched. But honestly, it should have actually happened a year earlier. It really should have happened on the 27th of December, 2018. And had we had that extra year of growth, we would be a lot bigger than we are right now. And so
do you think
really
maybe
two reasons, my opinion.
Do you think maybe Phantom is essentially a year behind some of these other chains because of that?
Yes. Yes, I've always thought about it that way.
Very important, guys. And this is something we've noticed. Right? Again, because of all the things that have gone on, Phantom is about a year behind these other blockchains. Now, if you think about that as the opportunity for us as investors, just go look at what some of these chains were doing. Look at Avalanche, look at Luna, look at Solana a full year ago, right? Where were they? and FANTOM is behind in that manner, that is the opportunity we have to the upside.
Now the gap is narrowing over time, which is great, but we're still behind and in time where we should have been. Yeah, I've always considered FANTOM had a lost year.
So do you think?
And that
well,
sounds
obviously,
very critical, but I know exactly what happened in the early days. I know all of the details, and I can tell you that's absolutely true. And it's sad to say, but it's true. However, on the plus side, we have come a long way. You know, a lot of projects in 2017, 18 that did ICOs, you know, they kind of like crashed and burned. They failed. You know, nobody like heard about them. A lot of people wrote FANTOM off, but we kind of came back. And it's quite rare for a project to be able to come back like the way we've done, and we have. So on the positive side, we have grown tremendously, and we can continue to grow because we have that strong like base right now of community, of the technology, and we kind of know what technology problems we need to solve.
And this is what's important, guys. Coming back to that point, the fact that they're a year behind, and the fact they didn't have the VC helping, you know, they had to do things the hard way. They've had to do things the hard way, but in doing so, they've trained the muscles to be prepared for the next run. What happens with projects like a Solana, let's use as an example, with heavy backing? Let's call them as, you know, the golden spoon child, right? They had everything paved out for them. It was very clear for them. They had the VC backing. They had FTM. They had Sam Bankman-Fried. Had Alameda Research, they had all these people helping them and pushing the cause to their institutional friend buddies and billionaires. And that doesn't mean it's a bad project, right? But it just means when that interest then subsides, when those VCs move on to another project, Solana's going to have to come back to base and say, hang on, how do we build that cult-like following? How do we build a community like FANTOM? Because you can feel it in the air what a community does, right? You know FANTOM has a really contagious community. We know ADA has the same, albeit Marmite, but they've got more of a cult-like following. You can see by the amount staked on ADA, right? Compared to something like a Solana. So eventually these projects that did have the easy route will have to come back to base and figure out their marketing message. They'll have to figure out how to build a community, how to have social interactions, how to really create that culture of stickiness around their blockchain. And FANTOM, through having to do it early, has slowed their progress down. But at some point, they're going to overtake the others who haven't had to figure this out yet. Very important point.
We definitely do have a lot of technology advantages. Excuse me. So first of all, like what the developers have built is a network that processes transaction asynchronously. And so let me break down what I mean by asynchronously. It means that when transactions enter the network, they don't get processed sequentially, or in other words, one at a time. So for example, on Ethereum or Bitcoin, you know, blocks get mined one at a time. There are transactions in the blocks. However, for FANTOM, it's completely different. There are multiple blocks that get processed simultaneously across the validators or the node set in the network, and you need just over two-thirds of the total validating power of the network. It's entirely proof of stake based in order to achieve finality for your block. And you only need one block to achieve finality. You don't need multiple blocks afterwards, because we say that finality or confirming transactions is deterministic. In other words, it's done with complete certainty. It's not done based on the longest chain rule or probabilistic consensus. And so the big challenge is, you know, when you're processing transactions asynchronously, because you don't have a particular order in which they come in, you have to figure out how do you get the final order in transactions, because transactions have to be consistent across all nodes, as you know, right? It's like one of the key properties of blockchains, right? There can't be a single inconsistency. It can't be 99.9% correct or 99.99% correct. It has to be exactly 100%. So the challenge is, how do you get the ordering of transactions that happen at random points in time? And how do you do that where it's fault tolerant? So if a node or two or three nodes goes down, it has no impact on consensus. And how do you do it in like the fastest possible manner? So what the developers have done is that it's kind of like achieved all those sorts of aims. So, you know, with the FANTOM chain basically never goes offline. The only time it ever went offline for about 12 hours was in February 2021, because there was a very strange edge case with the consensus. We fixed that. And since then, there's been absolutely zero downtime at all. And you can't necessarily.
And this is a very important point, guys. I wanted to play this bit to you just to remind you that FANTOM is at the top of its game from a technological stack point, right? What they're building with their ABFT system is second to none, right? The way they're tackling the blockchain trilemma, the way they're dealing with block finality, the way they don't have downtime like Michael Kong is talking about right now is unprecedented for a layer 1 blockchain of its size and market cap. And like I said, lack of VC backing. The fact that they've been able to figure this out in a bootstrapped manner almost is very, very impressive. And normally a blockchain of this size, you would be hearing negative pieces of FUD coming out regularly every couple of months. Oh, this has gone down, this hack has happened, this hack has... It's not happening that frequently on FANTOM. Yes, you'll see them every now and then, but normally they're certain projects, not the FANTOM blockchain itself, and that's where the FUD starts to cross-pollinate.
Say that about some of the other like L1s and L2s that are out there. They've had a lot more downtime than FANTOM. FANTOM basically never goes down now because it takes a lot to bring down the network. So that's one advantage, network stability. The other advantage is that we can process transactions quite fast. And so if you compare ourselves to kind of like Avalanche, right? When we do the same number of transactions as Avalanche, especially the more complicated like smart contract transactions, their transaction fees are like significantly higher than ours. They're like 50, 100, sometimes 200 or even 300% higher than what FANTOM's is. That means...
Guys, put that into perspective. Avalanche is not a joke. It's a great blockchain. I'm bullish on Avalanche as well. But just the fact that its transaction fees are far better than Avalanche, which I would call a new generation blockchain still, right? It's not like Ethereum, the old school one. So it just shows how advanced the technology is right now, FANTOM.
Means that at this point in time, we are more scalable on a transaction-to-transaction basis. And so being able to process these transactions asynchronously gives us a big advantage. That being said, there's still a lot of limitations with the technology. There's still the blockchain trilemma. So we haven't completely solved scalability. You can't run 1 million applications on FANTOM right now. Processing smart contracts is very slow for all EVM-based chains. So there's a lot of work done being there that I can talk about, I guess. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, I guess that leads...
Right, just going to skip on to the next point he covers off, which is about... Going to like this because this is about coming into different spaces, because no FANTOM is strong in DeFi. What about other spaces? What about NFTs? What about metaverse? What about gaming? We spoke about this as one of the, I wouldn't call it a weakness, but an opportunity for FANTOM, because FANTOM was and has been built so heavily through DeFi. Yes, in fact, part of that was due to Andre Cronje, right? That he came in, he helped the project start with its initial team, and then they went on being strong in DeFi. They did forks of many popular DeFi projects, and then FANTOM got its start with good TVL locked and known as the DeFi chain, right? But what about the next bit? FANTOM really needs to get started in NFTs, in gaming, in all these other spaces. Let's see what Michael Kong has to say.
FANTOM gaming space, because obviously there aren't many games currently on SKU users because they're really interesting to use. They have a system like FANTOM, but we're now also seeing like the play to earn FANTOM gaming space, because obviously there aren't many games currently on FANTOM. Is that something you're working on, or at least trying to like trying to incentivize? Because we did see the AVAX incentive program come out recently for gaming.
Yeah, so we are starting to see some growth on gaming and on the NFT side of things with the FANTOM chain. To be honest, like that sort of growth hasn't been as large as say like other L1s out there, and I think that's because like most people have kind of seen FANTOM as being like a DeFi chain for a number of reasons. Like one, that's like,
guys, I love this. The reason I love this is when a CEO understands his weakness. That is a sign of a CEO who's going to lead his projects to success. He's not going, no, but he's not answering Miles' question in a defensive manner to say, yeah, but we're one of the best DeFi platforms out there. Our total value lock is crazy. It's insane. This is what we're good at. We're going to focus and double down on this. No, he understands, like, we need to work on these other places. We managed to build a really clever incentive mechanism that allowed DApp developers to come in and build great DeFi projects. But how do we incentivize others? How do we incentivize NFT developers and gaming developers and the rest of it? Right? Very good that he's aware of it, because that's the first step towards solving the challenge.
How we like grew so fast at the beginning to, people wanted to like do DeFi on FANTOM because they didn't want to pay the sort of fees that you're paying on Ethereum. And number three, of course, like, Andre being someone that's very much involved in DeFi, help draw a lot of attention to FANTOM as kind of like a DeFi chain. But I think I just want to emphasize to people out there that FANTOM isn't just like a DeFi chain, right? It's not a chain that's specifically created for DeFi. It's a generalized smart contract platform. And that means that all sorts of like P2P applications that you can build on Ethereum and other networks, you can build on FANTOM and take advantage of exactly the same consensus that like DeFi takes advantage of, right?
What's the benefit what's the benefit for games to come on and build on Phantom? Because obviously on AVAX, you've got the subnets, which means they can kind of operate more freely. If a game's deploying on Phantom, what's the incentive for them to deploy on Phantom over Solana and AVAX, who have taken most of the share of the pie?
So when you deploy an application on Phantom, you get the benefit of the whole security of the network, right? So one of the disadvantages and one of the challenges with the subnets is, when you add subnets and you have to communicate between the subnets, it adds complexity, right? Which adds, the potential for something to go wrong, which adds, potential security issues. With Phantom, when you deploy an application on Phantom, it's pretty simple. You don't have to play around with many things. You can deploy on Phantom exactly in the same way as you deploy on Ethereum, and you take advantage of the full security of the entire network. It's not just part of the network. The benefits are faster, cheaper, secure transactions, via the asynchronous technology. And we've got a lot of technology upgrades coming out that will benefit, games deploying on Phantom. So for example, we've got this upgrade that we call SnapSync, which gives you the same sort of outcome as Ethereum SnapSync, which reduces on the testnet. It's reduced the data size of nodes by 90% and made things a lot faster to sync. So that means that we can increase the gas per second on the network, which means that we can have more network throughput. And so if you're an NFT project that has
that's going to be really important for NFTs and gaming. They require high throughput.
Executes a lot of transactions because you're doing a lot of saves, right? A lot of persistent changes to persistent data, which is when you do the transactions with NFT games. The better the consensus, the cheaper it is, the more advantageous it is to use that consensus, right? And so that's what we offer people. We do have a few games deploying on Phantom. So one of them is called Tank Wars, which the foundation invested some money into in the seed round. We've got a couple of metaverses. We've got 8-bit metaverse. We've also got the space theme game called Void Armada that's deploying on Phantom. So we do have some games and some metaverses deploying on the Phantom. It's still is kind of early days, to be honest, but we actually have seen quite a lot of growth in the past month or two actually on NFTs. There've been more NFT sales going on. There've been more NFTs being created. There've been games starting to deploy on Phantom. And so we're also talking to a few projects gaming guilds, people that support for the ecosystem, support for different projects where they offer for example creative options. They offer people they produce content Phantom branded content for metaverse projects to use. So we've got a whole ecosystem that's starting to develop, and I think that would start taking off a lot more in the coming months.
Really good, really important, and I'm glad Michael Kong's addressed it. And it just takes a couple of success stories. A good NFT project launches. Just look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, look at CryptoPunks, right? Just a couple of NFT projects, a good play-to-earn game, and then the developers will go, hang on a second, that was a hit on Phantom, right? And look at the security on the network. Look at the way the transaction fees are set up, which make it good for throughput for gaming, right? And then they're going to flock over. So it's good that they're starting. They're going to need to have a couple of flops before they have their one big hit. But that one big hit, don't underestimate the impact it can have on dragging other DApp developers into the ecosystem to build on Phantom. That's going to be really important. I'm glad Michael's addressed it there. Let's cover off his next point here now.
This program there, and we're working on the incentives program to kind of include gaming and NFTs and metaverses as well, to kind of help those grow. So there is the financial aspect to that.
Just to add some color to this. So what he's talking about here is the incentive program. Now, many blockchains do this. Avalanche, Solana, various others have a big pot of money, normally raised and helped by their VC funds, to say, here is a pot of money, 300 million, 400 million, 500 million, to attract DApp developers, gaming developers, NFT developers in this instance, to come and develop on their blockchain. And they give that. Now, what Phantom did really well in the DeFi space was they pegged the incentive to the total value locked. So they had all these different tiers that when your project, so let's say your Spooky Swap or your Spirit Swap, and you unlock one of the next levels in total value locked, you hit a milestone, you would get a reward in FTM tokens. And this was really clever. And this is why we saw so many great projects grow and grow and grow in TVL on Phantom. And the price has not followed it, right? It just missed it completely because Phantom just had that crazy growth. And that is where I saw the whole undervalued thesis. If you've not seen that, I'll link that up here explaining why I think it's so undervalued. I go through the mathematical model doing that. Now, what he's saying here is we need to create some sort of incentive mechanism, same for gaming, just like you did for DeFi. They need to figure out something that can incentivize, use a metric that will track maybe users, right, or number of people playing the game, or some reward tokens, and peg that to the amount of FTM they achieve. They need to come up with something like that.
But I think what's like really important to understand, and what's really amazing about the FANTOM community, is that like almost like all of it has been grown like organically. So you know, we haven't like paid projects a lot of money to deploy in FANTOM. We haven't had, you know, done any of that. We haven't had to do like crazy sponsorships worth like millions and millions of dollars, or tens of millions of dollars, even hundreds of millions of dollars nowadays. The number just seems to get bigger. You just seem to like add zeros to it. You know,
very important. Very important. A lot of other layer 1 blockchains out there are paying for these dApp developers to come across. So they're paying for this, create this image of it being a popular layer 1 blockchain, and a lot of dApp developers want to use, you know, these certain blockchains because of its technical prowess. But the reality is they're just getting paid to come and build on that network vis-a-vis going and building on another network. FANTOM is saying we're not doing that. If you don't want to build on FANTOM, don't build on FANTOM. We're not forcing you. We're not going to incentivize you. But if you do see the value of building on our network, if you do see the value our community has, if you do see how good our scalability is and how decentralized we are and how good our block finality is and throughput is, then come and build. Come and build, right? That's the approach he's taking. And that is harder in the short term, but it proves itself in the long run. The right way to go about things.
In order to attract users on chain, you know, we've spent very, very little in terms of marketing and PR in comparison, and that's deliberate, because the marketing and PR spend that we've done has been like kind of more strategic around like building a social media presence, getting placements, you know, in PR on like traditional or non-traditional media or crypto media, and really just kind of like talking about like, hey guys, there's an interesting project that has found FANTOM and deployed on FANTOM. You know, come and experience it for yourself and just come and interact with it. So, you know, in terms of user acquisition, I guess from the foundation's point of view, it's been like very, very low cost in comparison, but it's exactly the position we want to be in. We want the growth to be organic. We want people to be able to find FANTOM. We want the community to kind of spread organically by itself, because, you know, it's not top down. You know, it shouldn't be the foundation that controls the whole network, controls like the block producers, controls like who can come into the network or not. We want it to be open source technology that anybody can use, anybody can connect to, and just kind of be like the internet, essentially.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. He wants to be like the internet. That's the right aim. He's got high vision for this platform and taking the step to get there. And the last thing I wanted to cover off, the last point makes, is around the future vision of FANTOM. Let's see what Michael Kong has to say about the future vision of FANTOM.
Over like 5 years on the technology side, I want to be able to like horizontally scale. So that means that I want to be able to like kind of expand, you know, allow the technology to be like scalable to like the level of like how the internet is, right? And so that could be like, for example, in the form of sharding. It could be in the form of like a few other mechanisms. But if we can get to like that ability to horizontally scale, then we won't have those sort of limitations on gas. We won't have those sorts of like limitations with the blockchain trilemma that we do currently have at the moment. So that would like allow us to dramatically get a lot more users. So we can get like, you know, 50 to 100 times the amount of users we have now, 50 to 100 times the amount of applications we have right now. That would be ideal. And also in 5 years' time, if we can completely replace the existing smart contract execution stack that we have right now with our own FANTOM virtual machine, with our own way of reading and writing of data, instead of using like the GEF client, use a different client to kind of like interact with applications like above the stack. If we can like solve a lot of these technical problems and also have the security of the virtual machine, as I mentioned before, you know, giving feedback to users if there is a bug in the execution or not, then, you know, we'll have a lot more safer and smarter smart contracts out there, and they'll run a lot more efficiently than they do at the moment on all chains. So that's kind of like my long-term vision, or at least like 5-year vision. It may take a little bit longer than that, but, you know, I want the FANTOM ecosystem to start growing, you know, as big as the internet has been.
Nice. Right. So let's wrap this up. So ultimately, this was a really good interview by Michael Kong. It's good to see Michael Kong starting to come out now. Ever since the Cronje Cronje issue, he's been forced to come into the limelight a little bit and give his perspective. I think people starting to see that he's very genuine, very smart. He's young, he's passionate, he's got big visions for FANTOM. You see how many times he spoke about being like the internet, right? He's got that kind of drive to really take this as far as he can take it. And I think that's really good. The point I didn't play, and by the way, click the link in the description, watch the full video over at Crypto Banter if you got some time to watch the full hour-long episode. But in essence, what he covered off was he doesn't want there to be a key man risk, right? He didn't want to, he's learned his lesson from the Andre Cronje issue that he doesn't want one person to be the figurehead of FANTOM. So I think what he's going to do is sometimes he'll be in the limelight. He said sometimes he'll let his developers be in the limelight, and he's going to spread it out. So not everybody's looking now towards Michael Kong. So if Michael Kong leaves tomorrow, we're like, oh, FANTOM's fallen down, right? He understands these are blockchains. They need to be bigger than this any individual within the system. It's a community, it's a platform, and it should keep going regardless of what happens to any one individual. So he's definitely learned his lesson from the Andre Cronje issue and exit. And I think a lot of other blockchains are in similar situations. We know other blockchains. Look at Cardano, right? Again, which I'm invested in. Charles Hodgkinson, big part of that. What happened if Charles Hodgkinson left, right? We know Bitcoin, obviously, with Satoshi Nakamoto. What happens with Do Kwon, right? These kind of things are all going to make a difference in these platforms because we do have key men leading these platforms. And if they leave or something goes to happen to them, God forbid, then it does have an impact. There is a key man risk there. Okay, so definitely something to watch out for. But overall, great interview. Go check out the full one. Links in the description. As always, if you appreciate this type of content, we've now got a 35-minute video for you guys to enjoy on a Sunday. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. What I'm going to do at the end of this video, I'm going to link up a video for you to go watch my financial model breakdown of why I think FANTOM is so undervalued. If you still haven't watched that video, it's one of the most important videos I've watched. It's one of the reasons I started investing heavily in FANTOM is when I saw the arbitrage opportunity and the disparity in the TVL. And that's something we covered off. We saw Michael Kong speak about it and touch upon it there as well with Miles. It's definitely an important aspect and something which is being overlooked in the FANTOM space. Don't forget to check out NordVPN. Links in the description. Get yourself 10% off. Make sure you're staying safe in crypto. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in